a topic. It's one that I've always kind of had to grapple with and consider throughout my life as a traveling mama, living in different countries, different islands, different parts of the world with my children. Um, but today I want to talk about, my life as a traveling mom, as a mother who, does not ever live really around family, and what that really means. Am I just kind of rootless, vagabonding with children, or am I deeply rooted to something, right? And that something is something that doesn't come from externals or from the external environment. So to answer that question, um, I'll just give a little bit of my background because, I do come from a history of, kind of very deeply broken family when it comes to my family unit. So even though I have all my aunts and uncles were married and I had family that looked out for me, and I've always had a very close knit family on both sides, and pretty decent people. They're all very Christian, and they're generally decent, good people. My unit, as in my mom, basically, was kind of like the most broken. So I didn't grow up with my mother, and I didn't grow up with a father that was active, right? Because it was, like I said, it was just my unit. It was just my mom and dad that were the most kind of troubled in my whole family, right? On both sides. And so, because of that, yeah, it made me kind of have to develop a sense of self, kind of just being very self oriented. So, as a younger woman, this kind of looked almost more borderline. It was a very kind of not nice presentation of my personality. But as I grew up and became a mother, and even, it took me a while, even after becoming a parent, to become more oriented to other people. I was just so self absorbed for so long because of how much survival mode and PTSD I'd had from all of the things I went through, coupled with not having, parents. And so, it's been a long journey, but saying all that to say, I grew up, kind of very hyper independent in a certain type of way. And so this allowed for me to, I think, have my children and to think in ways that were very much outside the box about how I wanted to raise them and, the experiences I wanted them to have, especially based on all the crazy stuff I saw growing up. And so, for a good portion of the beginning of my children's lives, they were still both exposed to things that they shouldn't have been. Nothing too crazy like the things I saw, but I still was kind of reliving a lot of them traumas from my own childhood with them, and almost kind of mirroring the life that my mom had created for the short time that I did live with her as a child, mirroring that with them and reliving that. And so it took a lot of internal work for me to get past that. But in doing that and realizing that I need to put them first as my children, whether their dads were there or not, whether whatever was going on, I still needed to prioritize the children. I began to do that, and began to have real concerns about the lifestyle in America, the safety of things, the mental health, and how difficult it can be to maintain mental health out there, especially when you're being indoctrinated through the school systems. So, having your children in the public school system of the United States, I think, is very dangerous. And so, even though I had ended up leaving the U.S. for good about 7 years ago and moving to the Caribbean, which I had already been living back and forth in the Caribbean for many years, I still was exposed to, American stuff because I was living on an American island. So yeah, it took a lot. I had to go back this way for me to realize that it was okay, the questions I was having, that it was okay that I didn't fit inside the box, that I didn't want to do things the way everybody else was doing them, and that I wanted something better for my children. And so that's what has given me the courage over the years to be able to be out, living in different places with them, raising them in different communities, where we have to start all over and get a grasp of the local community, get an understanding of how to maneuver, learn new languages, adopt new cultural practices, um, and really, really just get aligned with the present. You know what I mean, and where we stand and where we are. And so, for many of you who have been coming on the channel, you know that my children and I are based and live in São Paulo, Brazil at this time. This is not our first time here. We've lived here prior. I've lived here before that, so we kind of have been back and forth here to Brazil over the years, as well as the Caribbean. But and then before that, you know, even more countries and places. But overall, we're based here, and you know, I have to say, even though I very rarely live around actual family, and barely even tune in with family. I don't see them much. I'm just very hyper independent, and because I live in a realm where I face the truth more so than trying to be delusional about what's happening in the world, that keeps me a little bit separated from being too close up under people that I love, but who just don't want to face things. They don't want to wake up. They want to stay delusional. And they have a lot of judgment about me for being so self-aware and so aware of my surroundings. So because of that, I don't see family much. I don't go around too many different folks. You know, in a lot of ways, my friends have become my real family over the years because they're people of my own heart, of my same ilk. They understand things similarly to me. So I have sister friends and brother friends throughout the world, and in a lot of ways, I see them as my real folks, right? My real tribe. But yeah, um, this lifestyle is not for everyone. But I will say that I feel much more of a sense of rootedness, and I would say maybe in the earth. But I'm not living in nature per se right now, like I usually am. But I do feel a sense of rootedness even despite me not living amongst the people that I grew up with and amongst the places that I was familiar with growing up. Hi, my God, maniac, oh boy. I still feel a sense of deep rootedness. Whereas when I was a younger woman and I was living this lifestyle, I did feel like a sense of like being on a spiral or on a wheel that I couldn't get off of just being housing insecure, so never homeless, but always going from place to place, doing a whole lot of traveling, things like that. My aunt would say, traipsing, going from, where they say, going from pillar to post. That was kind of the lifestyle I was living for a lot of the earlier years of my children's lives. They were never in danger. I never had them in dangerous settings. But we just weren't stable. We'd be in Mexico at one time. We'd be in France. We were, be in West Africa. We were traveling, but it wasn't with the right spirit. And so it was after, many years of internal work, plant medicine, doing a lot of the emotionally deep work. Because again, I didn't have parents and stuff. So I didn't really have that groundedness that comes with having had the stability of mom and dad, right? I had my grandparents, but they also weren't stable for a number of reasons. And so, because I didn't have that, I had to learn it. I had to learn how to teach myself or parent myself, basically. And so, life as a mother who is out here in the world has been a trip, but it's been the biggest learning lesson, the biggest kind of growth experience I could have ever put myself through, because at the end of the day, I was going to have to learn one way or the other how to be, a grounded woman, a grounded mother. And my lifestyle, my childhood didn't give me that. It didn't teach me those skill sets. I had to learn them later on in life. So I'm very grateful for it. Some of the things that I think you have to pull on as a mother that is out here, with children, kind of, feeling maybe like disconnected in a way from family and from the things that you're familiar with and from your comfort zone. Some of the things you have to pull on is like a deep type of courage. A courage and knowing that you will be safe, that you will know at the right time, if you are in the wrong place at the wrong time. You know what I mean? So you will know, you'll always have the guidance from your ancestors. You always have the guidance from, Most High, whatever, you know what I'm saying, your spiritual background or beliefs are, that you'll always have that guidance right on time, that you'll never be out here flailing and not know, what moves to make. And so these were some of the courageous, um, the courage that I had to pull from and to pull on in order to be out here providing my children with a very kind of unorthodox lifestyle that kept them from being influenced by a lot of the influences that I think we know come with growing up mainstream in the United States. I had to really, really cultivate that connection with spirit that goes beyond just being religious. You know what I mean? Um, and just always know, no matter what, that I have the capacity to do whatever I need to do for me and for my children. So it was like a deep level of self awareness and also self kind of acknowledgement that there's nothing that I can't actually accomplish for the purpose of securing me and my children, whether family is involved or not, whether I'm staying by people or you know what I mean. No matter what, I can do it. I got this. And so I had to develop all of this. Again, I didn't have it ingrained in me. I didn't get it from family. So I had to develop this kind of self-awareness and this self-esteem for myself, in order to be able to pull on that in times of me being the sole decision maker and the only person that my children could really rely on for anything, because their dads, neither one of them, because of the broken family that I came from, I recreated a lot of the similar scenarios for my children. So I did end up having children with two different men, and one of them was my ex-husband, and these were not loving relationships, really. And so, that matter of fact, one of them, my husband, it was quite an abusive relationship. And, I don't blame him or myself at this point. I blame both of us, if anything. But, we're cool now. But at the end of the day, I was recreating a lot of these negative things that I grew up watching, seeing. I grew up around a lot of abuse. And then I also grew up, with no real relationship with neither one of my parents. So these kind of things will set you up to be really someone who has to do a lot more deep diving into yourself in order to actually be able to have a normal, or not even a normal life, but to have a life that is fulfilled at all. You're going to have to do some deep diving, because those programs and those familiar programs run so deep inside of us that if we don't go in and, kind of deal with them and clean that up, you'll just recreate it. That's what happens. And that's what I was doing. So I'm so grateful, because I feel like I'm more grounded, more rooted than I've ever been. And I'm living in Brazil. Make it make sense. I have had times when I was living right in my grandparents' home with my children, because I used to help take care of them too as they were aging before they died. And I still didn't feel grounded. I still didn't feel a sense of being connected, being fine with being here on this planet and just being good with life. I still had just so much toxicity and so much energy that had me feeling like just kind of super rootless, super out there. Okay. And that's in family home. That's around family. That's surrounded by, hey, hey. Why you got my cup? Sorry, my daughter walking by. And that's with my peoples right around me. So it's here right now where I am now in Brazil that I've been able to kind of step into some of the more grounded times of my life, where, I'm fine with what I'm doing. I can work and, not complain and be grateful for what I have. My children are happy, they're settled. We have surplus of everything. You know what I mean? There's nothing to complain about. Everything is doing what it's supposed to do, and I'm grateful for that. And so, but that was all a lot of work that I had to do, to get here, because for many, many years, it wasn't like that. As a traveling mom, I was, like I said, going from pillar to post. It wasn't really that grounded. So even though I can be like, oh, we were in Africa, we did this, we did that, it's like, yeah, but when I think about it, it's not really stuff I'm proud of. Because when I think back about it, I'm like, man, you didn't know what you was doing back then. You were really just running. You were on a wheel. And I really can say that in all honesty. But as of right now, I feel like I can speak to the hearts of women who are looking for a new way, that are looking to get out of the school system, pull their children out of all that mess, and really get out here and live a real human life with children. I feel like I'm a good model of that because I was very, very much committed to that once I realized my role as a parent, because again, that didn't come naturally for me. Once I realized my role as a parent, I knew that, number one, the children and everything about them had to take precedent, you know what I mean, and become the most important thing in my life. And I became ruthless about doing what I had to do to protect that, protect them. So, I could think of stories and times where I have left, like I remember when I had my son, I had him in a midwife ward at a really nice hospital in Athens, Georgia. And so at that time, he was fine, but he had some little strange little coughing, or no, he would do some vomiting where he would be on the breast, and then he would do this projectile vomit. I mean, projectile. It was so scary. I didn't know what was wrong. Okay. And so I remember you going to the doctor because you're trying to be a responsible parent. And this white woman, and I'm not even on it like that, but I just have to speak on it because she was so racist. I was in Georgia, remember? This Caucasian woman, all she wanted to talk about was the fact that she could tell I had a little bit of a cough or something, and that my son was projectile vomiting, and he hadn't gotten his vitamin K shots and all of his kind of like post vax and all that stuff they want to do the minute the baby's born. We opted out all of that. And so she needed to come and harass me about that instead of dealing with what I was telling her about my child. So she didn't help me at all. And by the time I was leaving, she threatened me and was like, you need to go back to the hospital and get all that stuff done, okay? Or I'm not going to see you again and I won't help you with nothing. I mean, just a demon. So I was like, okay. And this is why we don't go to the doctor like that. So I went home, figured out some stuff, got my baby some little healthy gut bacteria going to help him out. And he stopped that projectile vomiting. But saying all that to say, she ended up calling social services on me for not obeying her. And so she called social services on me. And, at the time I had told her, that I was opting out of that. I was very honest about my research. And I knew I wasn't vaccinated or doing none of that. But I was very honest about everything that I was doing that came from a well-researched space. And so she sent social services over. And as soon as the woman got to the house to see me and my son, my daughter was at school, she was like, oh, yeah, that lady was tripping because she could talk to me and tell that it was just very conscientious decisions I had made in terms of what I was doing with my child, not me just being random or not wanting to do something. And so she said, and then she even let me know that the doctor had been making some kind of racist statements about me and the fact that, how can a black woman know anything about, these kind of things, essentially craziness. So that was my little taste of, how it can really go down in these hospitals in the United States and stuff like that. But so I went ahead after that. They went to my child's school. They came to my house a couple times. It was crazy. And it went on and passed. We got through it. They never heard from them again after that. But saying all that to say, after that, I was like, oh, hell no. And soon after that, I was wrapping it up. We were cooling out. After I pulled my daughter out of school, we wrapped that up. I think we went to the Virgin Islands, I would say, not too long after that for the first time, okay? Because we were back and forth to the Virgin Islands for years. And we went to the Virgin Islands, and I just went and lived on the land and, you know, stayed, kept my children out of school. We didn't do none of that. We homeschooled. We allowed all the amazing educators in the community to work with our children. And that's how we were doing things out there, like real renegade style. And so I had, in saying this story or telling y'all this story, to say that sometimes you just got to do what you have to do for your children. And you have to make decisions based upon their safety first, not what society says you're supposed to be doing with them at that time. So they say they're supposed to be in school, but school is not safe. If there's shootings, if they have to do drills to make sure that they, know how to behave. If there's an armed shooter on campus, if they're doing bomb threat drills, yeah. None of that. Your child should have to be exposed to that. You know what I mean? Your child should not have to be figuring out what she'll do if there's a shooter on her campus. Okay, that's not normal. That's an unnormal and very abnormal society right there. And so if you have that kind of stuff going on, sometimes you just got to do what you got to do, because as the parents and as, the people, the decision makers and the heads of households, it's on us if something happens and it's because we didn't want to make the right decisions. Because we already know what America is doing. We know what that energy is. We know what that is. So it's like, it's very important for us to get our minds straight about, the fact that this stuff is on us. We're the decision makers. We're the ones, especially the mothers. We're the heads of household usually. And so for me, I wasn't with it. I know even on the island, they would be having them little drills. They be having bomb threats at the schools on the island more so than like armed, like shooting. Sometimes they'll find guns on kids, but it would be more like bomb threats. So they would do bomb drills. It's like, ain't no way. I had my son going to school there in middle school. He was doing really well, excelling. And even to this day, it's kind of sad because I did pull him out after that grade. And we came back out here to Brazil. And I don't have any regrets, but I do feel kind of sad because I haven't found a good school for him yet here. So he's doing online stuff. But I had to choose that. There wasn't no way in the world we were going to sit up and let him have to be going through the anxiety and the turmoil of wondering if somebody's trying to bomb his school and being locked in. They would do lock-ins where you couldn't even get to your children. Uh, ain't no way. Yeah, you wonder, will you? We not even walking together, y'all. We a mess. It's just because I'm on this live. But plus she likes to do her own thing. We're both the same. That's my daughter. She is super independent and really don't even need to be talking to people or dealing with people that much. Sometimes it's funny. But anyway, yeah. So saying all that to say that, yeah, being out here as a single mom with these kids and this life as a traveling mother has been so rewarding, so educational, and it really just dropped me into my responsibility and taught me how to actually be a full grown woman. Because for a lot of years, I feel like I was on some Peter Pan type shit. I really didn't want to grow up, one, because I didn't really have much of a childhood. So I didn't want to grow up. I was doing all kinds of crazy stuff. When my daughter came, I just kept that going. Luckily, I always had a sense of safety and stuff. So even though I would be doing wild stuff, um, it would never be anything so drastic where we would be in any major danger. But I was very wild with my decision making as a young mother and as a younger woman. So we're very blessed, very fortunate. But, at this time, like I said, this is the most rooted and grounded I've been. And that's because I have, now have a habit now that I've been teaching myself and reparenting myself for these years, and because of plant medicine and the different tools I've utilized, this is the most grounded and rooted I have ever been. And so I'm very, very grateful for that. And so for the mothers that are thinking about doing similarly and getting out there and traveling, you have to consider your reasonings, but don't let nobody get in your head and try to make you think that there's something wrong with you, not wanting to send your child to these evil schools. We got to stop letting people put shit in our heads, especially family. We know damn well that there's something severely wrong with that system out there. So I just think, making the right decisions for your children, so that's not an option. That's what needs to happen at this time because there's so much insanity out here. And there ain't really a lot of protection, and most sisters don't have no man around them supporting and protecting them, even though they're supposed to be protectors and providers, supposedly, right? So we know the reality is we're on our own mostly, especially as mothers. So I would just say, and that's not everyone, but that's most of us. I mean, it's just a fact. It is what it is. So I would just say, yeah, that there's a lot. There's a lot to consider. For traveling mom, something else I've had to pull on, in this lifestyle is just, being very creative and resourceful because for sure it's hard to be out here in the world and not be clear about, where your money's coming from at all times, how you're going to do things. So it's so ironic to me because so many people right now are doing like a lifestyle where they're working remotely or, they're doing so many things online right now to keep their finances and everything afloat. And this is something that I started doing back in 2004. So I have been working remotely for companies and for myself and for the small businesses I had since '04, a long time now. And so, I'm very grateful that the Spirit had put that in me to be resourceful and to take advantage of this internet early on, because it's a lot of the reason why I have been able to maintain and have this lifestyle. And you have to still be resourceful. What if something happens with the internet? What if you are not stable and don't have it in your home and can't really work through it and use it in that way. Back in the days when everybody didn't have data. What if? So you still have to be resourceful. So there have been a number of small businesses and opportunities I have created for myself, through networking, through teaching people under the table in different countries, just working from home in different ways to make sure that we were always good. So I didn't always have no job I could rely on and lay back on. Sometimes you just need to figure out what you offer, what you bring to the table, and present it in the right environments, um, to the right people, and allow those opportunities to manifest themselves for you, right? And so being resourceful, yeah. So, this lifestyle that I lead with, being a traveling mom and everything is not one for a lazy minded person or somebody who is a worker, comes from a worker mentality where they work for people. And that's the mentality they can't break out of that. They've been working for 20, 25 years straight. This is not the lifestyle for that person. Okay, because sometimes you'll get abroad and then you think you have a role, a remote role, and find out this or that, and that role just disappear. So you be in and out of things, and you have to always be able to pivot and be quick to pivot and shift and figure out other ways to maintain your life, and maintain the needs of you and your children, right? So being, easy to pivot and very resourceful is super, super key. And it's a lot of, the things that have allowed me to be doing this for the last 20 something years and living like this. And like I said, when I first started, it wasn't always with the best of the grounding for what I was doing was not always the best. It wasn't always the best reasonings. But as I've grown and developed this lifestyle where me and the children just stay out of the U.S., I realized that has all been for the best. It's been the best choices I could have ever made. I don't have to be running around wondering if my daughter is out dropping it like it's hot in a club somewhere, for money. I don't have to worry about my son, throwing up gang signs and, you know what I mean, being on some street shit. I don't, like, with my kids have not been exposed to that. They act like single moms always have to be living in ghettos, and my children have never done any of that. We've always been blessed everywhere we go. Oh, see, okay, obrigada. Okay, the Brazilians are out now. These are the nicest people in the world, honey, and they don't like seeing nobody on their phone out in public. They will stop you because they steal phones out here. They're very into stealing phones. Now, I've never had any issues right here where I live, but that's just Brazil. Like there's a high likelihood someone will snatch your phone while you're out on the street. So I just watch my back when I do these walks in the morning because it's just such a nice time and way to do these videos, and I think better when I'm moving. So excuse me. I'm like, okay, let me just get out the way here because when the Brazilians start coming for you, trying to help, boy, they be trying to help. I'm telling you, they're the most helpful people. So let me get ready to get off of here. But yeah, these are some of the things that I have pulled on. We said resourcefulness, being able to pivot, a deep level of courage and insight. So, really, really tapping into my inner guidance at all times and trusting that is the key. You could have all kinds of stuff hit your mind and all kinds of visions and everything, but if you don't trust what you're seeing and understand and know how to interpret and also know how to differentiate, the things that are guidance for you, stuff that might be coming from external energies, because a lot of us have empathic ability. So a lot, sometimes we're picking up on things that don't have nothing to do with us, and that's just our nature. So, with that being said, you need to be able to discern. So that discernment is really key too. But overall, this is a lifestyle that I wouldn't trade in for the world, and I'm so grateful for it. And we're ever shifting, ever changing. So, we're here in Brazil for now. Who knows what the future holds? But we have spent a few years here, and on and off now. But we spent some years here. We've been here about 2 years straight now, and yeah, for now, it's a good, it's safe, wholesome spot for us. I mean, like I said, your phone might get took, but overall, it's been really wholesome and good to us, and I love that. So, does anyone have any questions before I get off of here? Because, child, I always take it as soon as the Brazilians start saying something to me, I'm like, okay, let me go on and get back to the house. Because does anyone have any questions? I don't know if anyone's on here. I know there's one person. Thank you for staying with me. So sweet, and also just let me talk there. Yeah, so, and that is it. I just wanted to vibe on that because I know there's more mamas getting out here. There's a lot of us out here in the world right now with our children that said, F that, I'm not staying in that crazy society anymore. I'm just not doing it. And I totally get it. And just like I said it 20 years, my daughter's 21. I said that 20 years ago. We're not doing this. At the time, I had a little job with this company, Working Solutions. I was just doing some, like administrative work or something, and it was a remote job. Honey, I think I just went ahead and put my VPN on. I was doing that 20 years ago. Moved out to Hawaii. So, Hawaii's not another country, but it is another land and another energy. And it was, definitely a huge shift in my life when I got out there and was really living on the land, eating raw food, hanging out with the hippies and all of the stuff I was doing in Hawaii. It was real transformative, and it helped prepare me for like the biggest shift, one of the biggest kind of most pivotal times in my life, which was moving back to California where I had grown up from from Hawaii and moving to the Bay Area, which was like crazy. Like so much of my life came into like formation when I moved back to the Bay. But that's a whole nother story for another video, right? But yeah, if y'all have any questions about the lifestyle, about being out here with kids, I more so on this video went into, some of the deeper kind of social and this emotional stuff and the different kind of character traits that I've had to have in order to be able to live like this. Here's my daughter. I was kind of waiting on her. So yeah, Pete, if you like the video, give it a like. Go ahead and hit me up below so we can chit chat some more. I definitely respond in the comments. And yeah, if you all are interested in coming to Brazil, where we are now, I do offer tours as well as concierge to support people who are looking to move to the area. We do counseling, travel consultations, and coaching, and all of that good stuff. So I will put my links below. Also, down below, I'm going to put some of my ebooks and different things that I have put together for you all. And I hope you guys have a wonderful, wonderful Thursday. Peace, peace, peace.